They thought she was just a poor, aging housekeeper, a burden and embarrassment they needed to hide. But when her own children humiliated her in public, she smiled. Because what they didn't know was that the restaurant where they mocked her belonged to her. That night, she revealed everything on live television. The secret fortune she had built in silence, the empire she had created while pretending to be poor, and the truth about the children who had turned into strangers. The video went viral across the world. The woman the world once ignored became a symbol of dignity, justice, and second chances. But this isn't just a story of revenge. It's a story of rebirth, of a 70-year-old woman who lost everything she thought she loved, only to discover the power of self-respect. 5 years later, the woman once called the Maid is now a global figure, a business leader, and founder of Invisible Mothers, helping thousands of women regain their voice and dignity. Her children, the ones who betrayed her, now work honest jobs, raising families built on humility and love. Because sometimes, it takes the deepest betrayal to awaken the strongest version of yourself. ChatGPT dinner. My children scheduled a family dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in the city, but when I arrived, there wasn't a seat reserved for me. My daughter-in-law, Catherine, smiled with disdain and told me that maybe a cheaper place would be more appropriate for me. I started to laugh, a laugh that came from the deepest part of my wounded soul. Everyone looked at me as if I had lost my mind. Then I walked toward the owner and asked for the best available table. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Elliot, my trusted business partner for 15 years, approached immediately. My children didn't know that the elegant restaurant where they had just humiliated me belonged to me, that every dish they were served, every glass of wine they drank, every cent they spent went directly into my bank account. My name is Teresa Miller, I'm 69 years old, and I've just discovered the true faces of the children for whom I sacrificed my entire life. I became a widow at 30 with 3 small children, David, Michael, and my little Helen, who died of pneumonia because I didn't have the money for a private hospital. From that day on, I swore that my children would never go without. I worked as a housekeeper for 40 years. 40 years washing, ironing, cleaning other people's homes while my hands cracked and my back bent. 40 years waking up at 5 in the morning to make breakfast for my children before heading out to work. While other mothers took their kids to the park, I scrubbed strangers' bathrooms. While they enjoyed family vacations, I worked extra weekends to pay for my children's school trips. I paid for private universities for both of them. David studied business administration, and Michael studied engineering. I bought them their first cars, gave them the down payments for their apartments, paid for their extravagant weddings. I gave them the life I never had, the life I dreamed of having but sacrificed for them. David graduated and got a job at a major bank. He married Catherine, a cold woman who, from the very first day, saw me as a threat, as if I were going to take away something she thought belonged to her. Michael followed in his brother's footsteps. He was always the weaker one, always needing someone else to make decisions for him. 6 months ago, I officially retired. Officially because the truth is, I stopped depending solely on my housekeeping salary 15 years ago. But they don't know that. No one does. I prefer they believe I'm just a poor, dependent old woman. It's better to see people's true faces when they think you have nothing to offer them. Last Tuesday, Catherine called me with that sweet, fake voice she uses whenever she needs something. Teresa, dear mother-in-law, we've organized a family dinner to celebrate David's promotion at the bank. It'll be at the Terrace. You know the place. Saturday at 8. Of course I knew it. Far better than she could imagine. I arrived on time as always, wearing my best clothes, which to them still looked like the clothes of a maid. I walked toward the table where they were all seated. David, Catherine, Michael, and his girlfriend Emily. There were 5 chairs taken and none left for me. "Excuse me," I said. "I think there's a chair missing." David lifted his eyes from his wine glass and looked at me with that expression I'd come to recognize too well. That mix of annoyance and shame that always appeared when I was around his friends or colleagues. "Mom," he said, "we thought it might be better if you had dinner somewhere else. This restaurant is quite exclusive. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable." Catherine nodded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Exactly, Teresa. Maybe a cheaper place would be better for you. Something more appropriate for your situation. Her words hit me like slaps to the face. Michael said nothing, just looked away, a coward as always. Emily seemed uncomfortable, but she didn't dare contradict Catherine. The other guests lowered their heads, embarrassed by the scene they were witnessing. Then I began to laugh. A laugh that started softly and grew louder, deeper, until the entire restaurant fell silent, staring at me. David watched me with a mixture of confusion and panic, as if suddenly realizing something was terribly wrong. Catherine frowned, clearly upset because her plan to humiliate me wasn't going as expected. I walked slowly toward the reception, where Elliot stood with that professional smile I knew so well. "Excuse me," I said loudly so everyone could hear. "I'd like the main table, the one in the center of the dining room." Elliot nodded immediately. "Of course, Mrs. Miller. Your usual table is ready." The silence that followed was deafening. I saw David's eyes widen, Catherine turn pale, and Michael drop his fork to the floor. Because what they didn't know, what they had never bothered to ask, was that Teresa the maid had secrets that could destroy their world of lies and appearances. 15 years ago, while they were busy building their perfect lives with the money I gave them, I started investing my savings. Not in just anything, but in property, in businesses, in places like the Terrace, the exclusive restaurant where they had just told me I didn't belong. But let's leave that for later. First, you need to understand who these people I call my children really are. David, my firstborn, the one I carried in my arms through nights of fever when I couldn't afford a private doctor. The same man who now wears $3,000 suits and feels ashamed to introduce me to his colleagues at the bank. Catherine, his wife, comes from a middle-class family that always thought it was better than it really was. When she married David, she thought she'd won the lottery. A successful man with a good job and property. What she didn't know was that everything David had came from his mother, the maid. I paid the down payment on their apartment. I bought him his first car. I financed their honeymoon in Europe. Michael, my baby, the most sensitive one, the one who used to cry when I came home late from work. Now he's a 35-year-old man who can't make a single decision without consulting his older brother. His girlfriend, Emily, is sweet but weak. She doesn't have the strength to stand up to Catherine when she decides to humiliate her mother-in-law. For years, I was the perfect grandmother-to-be. The one who would babysit for free, cook on Sundays, always be available whenever they needed me. But now that I've retired, now that, according to them, I no longer generate income, I've become a burden, a source of shame to be hidden. Last week, David came to visit me at my apartment. "Mom," he said, "Catherine and I have been talking. We think it would be better if you moved somewhere smaller, something more affordable. We could help you find a nursing home that's decent but not too expensive." A nursing home. After 40 years of sacrifice, after giving them everything I had, and everything I didn't, they wanted to put me in a nursing home so they could go on with their lives without the inconvenience of a mother who no longer served a purpose. Michael agreed, of course. "It's what's best for you, Mom. You'll be surrounded by people your age, you'll have activities, and you won't be alone in that big apartment." What he didn't say was that my apartment, the one they considered too big for me, was the same one where I raised them. The same one where I stayed up through the night when they were sick. The same one where I cried in silence so they wouldn't hear me after working 16-hour days. That night after they left, I sat in my kitchen and made a decision. If they wanted to treat me like a stranger, as if I hadn't sacrificed my entire life for them, then it was time they met the real Teresa. Not the submissive maid they had taken for granted for decades, but the woman who had secretly built an empire while they believed she was just a poor, helpless old lady. Because you see, my dear children, while you spent the money I gave you, I was investing what was left. While you built lives of appearances, I was building my future. And that future included being the owner of several businesses in the city, including the very restaurant where you just humiliated me. The look on David's face when Elliot personally escorted me to the main table is something I will never forget. His eyes darted nervously between the manager and me, as if trying to solve an impossible riddle. Catherine had completely lost her arrogant smile, and now looked at me with a mix of confusion and growing fear. I sat at the best table in the restaurant, the one usually reserved for celebrities and powerful politicians. Elliot snapped his fingers, and 3 waiters appeared immediately. "The premium wine list, Mrs. Miller?" he asked, with the kind of deference reserved only for true owners. "Of course, Elliot. And bring a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2010 to that table over there. Compliments of the house." I pointed toward where my children were sitting. Their faces now reflected absolute panic. David stood up from his seat and walked toward my table with hesitant steps. "Mom," he whispered, "what's going on here? Why do they know you so well? Why are they treating you like the owner?" I finished his sentence with a serene smile. "Because I am David. I've been the majority partner of the terrace for 15 years. Every time you've come here to celebrate your promotions, your anniversaries, your professional achievements, you were spending money in my restaurant. Every bottle of wine you've drunk, every gourmet dish you've enjoyed, went straight into my bank account." David's face completely crumbled. "That's impossible," he stammered. You clean houses. You don't have money for something like this." "Oh, my dear son," I replied calmly. "There's your first mistake. Assuming that because I cleaned other people's houses I was poor. Assuming that because I sacrificed for you I was stupid." Catherine staggered closer, clearly in shock. "But Teresa, how is it possible that you have money to buy a restaurant like this? Where did you get so much money?" Her voice had lost all its previous arrogance and now sounded small, frightened. "It's very simple, my dear daughter-in-law," I said. "While you were spending the money I gave your husband, I was saving every cent I could. While you lived your luxurious lives, thinking it was your natural right, I was investing, in property, in businesses, in the future you thought I didn't have. But this doesn't end here. Oh no, this is just the beginning. Because, you see, for all these years I haven't just been a housekeeper. I've been a silent observer. I've seen how you treat me when you think you need something from me. And how you treat me when you believe I'm of no use to you. 3 months ago, I lost my cleaning job at the office because the company went bankrupt. I didn't tell you because I wanted to see your natural reaction. I wanted to know if you'd offer help, if you'd care about my well-being, if you'd even ask how I was surviving. Instead, you took what you thought was my vulnerability as an opportunity to get rid of me." "David," I said, "do you remember our conversation last week? You suggested a nursing home. You told me it would be better for me to be surrounded by people my age. What you were really saying was that you wanted me out of your life because you no longer found me useful." Michael finally gathered the courage to approach our table. "Mom," he stammered, "we didn't mean to, we just thought it would be best for you." I cut him off with a cold stare. "My dear Michael, for 40 years I've known exactly what's best for me. Working until my body gave out so you could have everything you wanted. Sacrificing my dreams so you could chase yours. But apparently, when it comes to deciding about my own life, suddenly I'm too senile to know what's good for me." Elliot leaned close and whispered discreetly in my ear. "Mrs. Miller, there are journalists at the entrance. It seems someone leaked that you're here." "Perfect," I whispered back. "Let them in. It's time the whole city learned who Teresa the maid really is." Catherine's eyes filled with pure panic. "Teresa, please," she begged. "Don't make this public. David could lose his job at the bank if this gets out." "What's that?" "Catherine, the woman who humiliated her mother-in-law in public. Who tried to throw her out of a restaurant she owned. Who treated her like a beggar after that same woman financed her education and her lifestyle." I smiled coldly. "Don't worry, my dear daughter-in-law. This is just getting started. Because it turns out the terrace isn't my only investment. I have other businesses, other properties, other surprises you couldn't even imagine. And now that you've shown your true colors, now that you've made it clear what you really think of me, it's time you learn the consequences of underestimating the woman who gave you life." The journalists poured into the restaurant like a storm, cameras flashing, microphones pointed at our table. David tried to hide behind his napkin, but it was too late. Catherine covered her face with her hands, whispering desperately that this would ruin her social reputation. Michael just froze, as he always did when things got complicated. "Mrs. Miller," shouted one reporter, "is it true that you're the owner of the Terrace and other exclusive establishments in the city?" I stood up, with the dignity I had lost through decades of silent humiliation. "That's correct," I said firmly. "I've been the majority shareholder of this restaurant for 15 years. I also have investments in other businesses that my children knew absolutely nothing about." "But that's not the most interesting part of this story," another journalist added. "We've been informed that just minutes ago, your own children tried to throw you out of the restaurant, claiming you didn't belong in such an exclusive place." My smile widened. "Exactly. My children, the ones I sacrificed 40 years of my life for, believed they had the right to humiliate me publicly in my own establishment." The cameras immediately turned toward David and Catherine. "Sir," one reporter asked, "is it true that you tried to throw your mother out of the restaurant?" David's face was bright red, a mix of shame and terror. We didn't know. It was a misunderstanding." "It was no misunderstanding," I interrupted, my voice clear and steady. "It was a calculated humiliation. They told me to find a cheaper place, something more appropriate for my situation. They even suggested McDonald's as a better fit for my social status. All of it in front of other guests, to maximize my embarrassment." The journalists' outrage was palpable. One of them turned directly to Catherine. "Ma'am, what do you have to say about suggesting that your mother-in-law, the very woman who apparently financed your family's lifestyle, should eat at McDonald's instead of joining you for a family dinner?" Catherine stammered incoherently. That wasn't our intention. We thought she would be more comfortable." Her words sounded pathetic even to her own ears. I had seen her use that same emotional manipulation tactic on me for years, but in front of the camera she was exposed for what she really was: a cruel, calculating woman. "But wait, there's more," I told the reporters. "A week ago these same children who publicly humiliated me came to my home to suggest I move into a nursing home. According to them, it would be better for me to be surrounded by people my age rather than living alone in an apartment that's too big for a retired housekeeper." The cameras perfectly captured the look of horror on Michael's face. "Mom, please," he begged. "Don't say that on television. They'll think we're monsters." "They are," I replied without hesitation. "They are exactly that. Monsters I raised without realizing it by giving them everything without teaching them the value of sacrifice." "Mrs. Miller," an experienced reporter asked, "how long have you been planning this revelation?" The question made me smile bitterly. I didn't plan it. For years I kept my investment secret because I wanted to protect my children from the envy and problems money can bring. I wanted them to build their lives on their own merits, not on my wealth. But when I lost my job 3 months ago and didn't tell them, when I watched how they reacted believing I was in a vulnerable position, when I saw their first response was to try to get rid of me instead of offering help, I understood I had raised 2 strangers. 2 people who only valued me for what I could give them, not for who I am. David tried to approach me, probably to do some damage control, but Elliot intervened discreetly. The manager had worked with me long enough to understand that this confrontation had been brewing for years, and he wasn't going to let anyone interrupt it. "Mrs. Miller," we asked Catherine, "did you know your mother-in-law had these properties and investments? Why do you think she never mentioned it?" Catherine looked to David for help, but he was too busy trying to avoid the cameras. "We always thought Teresa was just a housekeeper. She never told us she had money." "Exactly," I confirmed. "I didn't tell you because I wanted to see who you really were when you believed I had nothing to offer. And now I know. Now I know that the filial love I thought existed was actually economic dependence disguised as affection." A young reporter raised his microphone. "Mrs. Miller, what will happen now with your family relationship?" My answer was clear and definitive. There is no family relationship to save. They made their decision when they chose to humiliate me publicly. I'm making mine now. From this moment on, David and Michael stop being my sons, and Catherine is no longer part of my family. The silence that followed was sepulchral. The cameras captured perfectly the moment 2 grown men realized they had just lost not only their mother, but also the secret financial support that had sustained their lives for decades. The story went viral within hours. Videos of the restaurant confrontation circulated across social networks with headlines like, "Housekeeper reveals she's a millionaire after her children humiliate her, and the perfect revenge of a betrayed mother." The comments were merciless toward David and Catherine. People were outraged at the cruelty shown toward a mother who had sacrificed everything for her children. The next day, David received a call from his boss at the bank. The institution could not afford to have employees involved in public scandals of family abuse. His image was completely destroyed, and his position at the bank became untenable. He was suspended indefinitely while they evaluated his future at the company. Catherine faced even worse consequences. Her upper-class social circle repudiated her completely. The wives of David's colleagues who used to invite her to lunches and exclusive charity events now avoided her like she was radioactive. Her membership at the tennis club was revoked and her name removed from the lists for the city's major charity galas. Meanwhile, I checked into the city's most luxurious hotel, the same place where years ago I used to clean rooms as a housekeeper. Now I occupied the presidential suite, overlooking the city from the 30th floor, planning my next moves with the cold precision of a military strategist. Michael tried desperately to call me. His voicemail messages were pathetic. "Mom, please forgive us. We didn't know what we were doing. We can fix this. We're family." But real family doesn't humiliate in public. Real family doesn't abandon you when they think you're no longer useful. Real family doesn't suggest nursing homes as a solution to their own shame. My lawyer, Ezekiel Miller, arrived at the hotel on Tuesday morning with a satisfied smile. "Teresa," he told me, "I've reviewed all the documents you asked for. Indeed, both David and Michael are registered beneficiaries of several of your investments and properties. The apartment where David lives, the car he drives, even his savings account receives automatic monthly contributions from you. Contributions they were unaware of." "Perfect," I replied. "I want you to cancel all those benefits immediately. Let them stand on their own as independent adults who claim to be." Ezekiel nodded, clearly enjoying the case. "I've also been investigating their personal finances. Without your secret contributions, David won't be able to maintain his lifestyle for 3 months. The apartment he lives in is in your name. Technically, he is only a tenant without a contract." That same afternoon, Catherine appeared at the hotel begging for an audience. I received her in the lobby in public, so she couldn't stage any dramatic scene. "Teresa, please," she begged with tears in her eyes. "You have to understand our position. David is going to lose his job. We have nowhere to live if you take the apartment away. We have debts, obligations." "How interesting," I replied with icy calm. "Now you're worried about economic consequences. When I lost my job 3 months ago, your first concern was how to get rid of me, not how to help me. When you thought I had no money, your reaction was public humiliation. Now that you know I have resources, you come with crocodile tears." David appeared behind her, clearly defeated. "Mom," he murmured, "I know we made terrible mistakes, but we are your blood, we are your children. You can't destroy our lives like this." My laugh echoed through the hotel lobby. "Destroy their lives." Interesting choice of words. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply withdrawing the support you took for granted. You decided Teresa, the housekeeper, didn't deserve to sit at your table. Fine. Now you'll discover what life is like without Teresa, the investor who funded your luxuries from the shadows. Catherine tried one last desperate tactic. "Teresa, if you make this public, if you take everything from us, you will also suffer. People will think you're a cruel mother abandoning her children." My smile grew even colder. "Dear Catherine, people already know exactly who abandoned whom. The videos are everywhere," I said. "The whole world saw how you tried to throw me out of my own restaurant." That night, from my suite, I called Elliot to coordinate the next steps. The media wanted exclusive interviews. Television producers were offering documentaries about my story. Magazine editors wanted feature articles about how I had built my empire in secret while working as a housekeeper. But I had more ambitious plans. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about rebuilding my life without the emotional leeches that had been draining my energy for decades. It was about proving that a 69-year-old woman could start over and become more powerful than ever. The next day marked the beginning of the next phase of my plan. David and Michael were about to discover that underestimating their mother had been the most expensive mistake of their lives. The digital war began when David and Catherine decided to create their own narrative on social media. Desperate to save their reputations, they posted a tearful video on Instagram, portraying themselves as victims of a vengeful, manipulative mother. David spoke about how I had kept my wealth secret to control them psychologically, while Catherine sobbed that a real mother would never abandon her children over a simple misunderstanding. Their video gathered thousands of views within hours, but not the reaction they expected. The comments were brutal. People vividly remembered the footage of them throwing me out of the restaurant, suggesting McDonald's as a more appropriate alternative for someone of my social class. Their attempt at victimhood only worsened their public image. But I had something they didn't know existed. For years, every time they came to visit me in my apartment, every time they made a cruel remark about my work or my lifestyle, I had recorded our conversations. Not out of malice, but because my memory wasn't as sharp as before, and I wanted to remember the important things my children told me. I never imagined those recordings would become my most powerful weapon. Ezekiel helped me set up my own YouTube channel. At 69, I became an influencer, out of necessity. My first video was titled, "The Truth Behind the Crocodile Tears." I posted it on a Thursday night, and by Friday morning it had 500,000 views. In the video I played the recordings. David calling me a financial burden, Catherine mocking my cheap clothes in front of her friends, and Michael suggesting it would be better for everyone if I moved away, because my presence embarrassed them when they had important guests. The most devastating clip was from 3 weeks before the restaurant incident. David had come to my apartment supposedly to visit me, but in reality, he wanted to check my finances to calculate how much it would cost to keep me in a nursing home. The audio clearly captured him rummaging through my drawers, searching for bank statements, saying how people my age often develop dementia, and that it was important for the family to manage their resources before they wasted them. The public reaction was immediate and devastating for my children. #TeresaJustice became a global trending topic. Thousands of people shared their own stories of ungrateful children, selfless parents, and broken families. My story had struck a universal nerve, the pain of betrayal within one's own blood. International media started calling. CNN wanted an exclusive interview. Univision offered a 1-hour special. Netflix reached out with a proposal for a documentary about my life. Suddenly, Teresa the housekeeper had become a global symbol of maternal dignity and generational justice. Meanwhile, the consequences for David and Catherine multiplied exponentially. The bank where David worked issued a public statement distancing itself from him. They couldn't afford to be associated with someone who had publicly humiliated his elderly mother. His termination became official. Catherine lost her part-time job at the art gallery. The elderly owners were personally offended by her treatment of me. Her entire social circle abandoned her. None of her former friends answered her calls. Michael tried to publicly distance himself from his siblings by posting a video apology, claiming he had been against mistreating me from the beginning. But I had recordings proving he had actively joined the conversations about sending me to a nursing home, even laughing at my attempts to dress nicely for their family events. His apology video went viral for all the wrong reasons. People mocked him for being a coward, for trying to save himself by throwing his siblings under the bus, and for lying so blatantly when audio evidence proved his complicity. Emily, his girlfriend, broke up with him after the scandal affected her job as a teacher. The parents of her students didn't want someone associated with elder abuse teaching their children. The social pressure became unbearable for her. On Friday night, I received a desperate call from all 3 of them. They had lost everything: their jobs, relationships, reputations, social circles. They begged for a meeting to reach some sort of agreement. They wanted me to remove the recordings, to make a family reconciliation video, to stop the media storm that they claimed was ruining their lives. I told them we could meet on Saturday at the Terrace, my restaurant on my territory under my terms. Not to reconcile, but to hear the conditions under which we could coexist on the same planet without me continuing to expose every one of their miseries to the world. They arrived on time, physically and emotionally destroyed. David had lost 20 pounds in a week. Catherine had deep dark circles and had abandoned any trace of elegance. Michael looked like a ghost of himself. They sat across from me at the same table where a week earlier they had tried to humiliate me. The irony was delicious. Now they were the ones who didn't belong in that exclusive place. Now they were the ones who looked out of place, uncomfortable, defeated. They had one final chance at redemption. But the conditions were going to be very specific, very humiliating, and absolutely non-negotiable. I looked at them sitting in front of me like scolded children and felt a strange mix of power and sadness. These were the babies I had held in my arms, the children I had read bedtime stories to, the teenagers I had worked double shifts for so I could afford their whims. Now they were strangers begging for mercy from the woman they had tried to destroy. "Very well," I said calmly. "You're going to listen to my conditions without interrupting. First, you're going to make a public apology video where you specifically acknowledge each of your actions. No generalities. No euphemisms. You'll say exactly how you treated me, why it was wrong, and why you deserve the consequences you're facing." David opened his mouth to protest, but I stopped him with a look. "Second, you will return every cent I've invested in your lives over the past 20 years. The apartment, the cars, the weddings, the universities, the vacations. Everything. My lawyer has already calculated the total sum with interest. 800,000. Catherine's face fell apart completely. "Teresa, that's impossible," she whispered. "We don't have that kind of money." "Of course you don't," I replied. "Because you never learned how to earn it. You lived as parasites on my sacrifice for decades. Third, you're going to work to pay me back that debt. I own several businesses that need cleaning, maintenance, and kitchen staff. You'll start from the bottom as employees, earning minimum wage." Michael finally found his voice. "Mom, you can't force us to work as domestic workers." I finished his sentence. "As what I was for 40 years to keep you alive." "Exactly that. You're going to learn what it means to wake up at 5 in the morning, to work until your hands ache, to come home too exhausted for anything else. Fourth," I continued, "you will live in the same kind of building where I raised you. Small apartments, modest neighborhoods, public transportation. You'll experience exactly the living conditions I had while you enjoyed luxuries paid for with my sweat." Catherine broke down in uncontrollable tears. "This is pure revenge," she sobbed. "This is cruelty." "No, my dear," I replied. "This is justice. Revenge would have been leaving you on the street with no chance at redemption. I'm giving you the opportunity to earn my forgiveness, but you'll do it the hard way. Fifth, you'll attend mandatory family therapy. Not to reconcile right away, but so you can understand the depth of the damage you caused. Sixth, you'll do community service in nursing homes. You'll care for people my age who were abandoned by their families, so you can understand exactly what you wanted to turn me into." David tried to negotiate. "Mom, be reasonable. We can't meet all these conditions. It's too extreme." My laughter echoed through the restaurant. Extreme. Extreme was suggesting McDonald's when I arrived to have dinner with my family. Extreme was planning to put me in a nursing home without asking. Extreme was humiliating me publicly in my own restaurant. Seventh, I continued mercilessly, you'll sign legal documents renouncing any right to my estate when I die. You won't inherit a single cent. My fortune will go to charities that truly help working mothers and abandoned elders. The silence that followed was absolute. The three of them exchanged glances, calculating whether they had any options left. They had every reason to be terrified. Without my secret financial support, without jobs, without social circles, they faced total ruin. Eighth, I said, If any of you try to manipulate this situation, leak information to the media to play victims, or break any of these conditions, I will release the rest of the recordings I have. And believe me, there's enough material to destroy any chance of public redemption you might still have." Catherine looked up with desperate eyes. "How long do we have to do all this?" "Until I believe you've learned your lesson," I replied. "It could take months, or years. That depends on you proving you've truly changed, not just pretending out of desperation. Ninth," I continued, "you'll move out immediately, this very week. Ezekiel already has the rental contracts ready for your new apartments. They're modest but decent, similar to where I lived when you were children. You'll learn to live on tight budgets, to value every dollar you earn. 10th and final," I said coldly, "you'll work 6 days a week in my businesses under managers who report directly to me. You won't receive special treatment for being my children. In fact, you'll be evaluated more strictly than any other employee." Michael finally spoke, his voice shaking. "And if we do all of this, will you really forgive us? Can we ever be a family again?" I looked at him for a long moment before answering. "I don't know, Michael. Forgiveness can't be guaranteed. It's earned day by day through consistent actions, genuine humility, and deep character change. You destroyed something that took decades to build. If it can be rebuilt, it will take a long time." David asked the question they were all thinking. "And if we refuse to accept these conditions?" My smile turned icy. "Then I continue the media campaign. I release the rest of the recordings, the videos of you mocking my clothes, laughing at my attempts to fit into your social world, planning how to get rid of me. Believe me, there's enough material to keep this scandal alive for years." The three of them looked at each other again. They had no choice and they knew it. It was either accept my conditions or face total ruin, with no chance of redemption. After 2 hours of tense silence, David was the first to speak. "We accept," he muttered, his voice breaking. "We accept all your conditions." Catherine and Michael followed, defeated. They had no alternative and they knew it. It was this or complete, irreversible destruction. Ezekiel, who had been waiting at a nearby table, approached with the contracts already prepared. Every clause was detailed, every condition legally specified. There would be no room for misunderstandings or manipulation later. They signed with trembling hands, sealing their fate for the years to come. Monday morning marked the start of their new lives. David was assigned to the cleaning team at my corporate offices. The man who, a week earlier, wore $1,000 suits now wore a blue uniform and carried cleaning supplies. His former colleagues from the bank saw him mopping the lobby floors, and the humiliation in his eyes was visible from across the street. Catherine was sent to work in the kitchen at the Terrace, the same restaurant where she had once humiliated me. She started washing dishes, peeling vegetables, scrubbing grease off grills. Her hands, once pampered with expensive creams and weekly manicures, now cracked from industrial detergent and bore cuts from kitchen knives. Michael was assigned to maintenance at my real estate properties. He repaired pipes, painted walls, trimmed gardens. The physical labor left him exhausted at the end of each day. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to earn money through sweat and effort. The first weeks were brutal for them. Their bodies weren't used to physical labor. David complained of back pain from bending over to clean floors. Catherine cried in secret over burns from hot oil on her arms. Michael developed calluses on hands that had only ever known computer keyboards. But the hardest part wasn't the physical work. It was the constant social humiliation. Customers at the Terrace recognized Catherine from the viral videos. Some took pictures of her washing dishes. The images spread across social media with mocking captions about how the woman too elegant for her mother-in-law had fallen from grace. David faced the morbid curiosity of his former colleagues. Some even stopped by the building just to see him mopping floors, to confirm that the once successful banker was now a janitor. His photos circulated in WhatsApp groups with captions like, "Look how the man who kicked his mother out of her restaurant ended up." Meanwhile, I moved into a mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood of the city, a property I had bought years earlier but never lived in, to avoid raising suspicion about my true financial situation. Now, free from the facade of the poor housekeeper, I could finally live openly according to my real means. The house had 10 bedrooms, vast gardens, a swimming pool, and a panoramic view of the city. It was everything I had dreamed of during those decades spent living in tiny apartments and working in other people's homes. For the first time in 40 years, I had housekeepers working for me instead of being the one working for others. I hired Julia, a 50-year-old woman who had lost her job during the pandemic and desperately needed an opportunity. Unlike the way my children had treated me, I treated her with respect, paid her a fair salary, provided health benefits, and gave her a comfortable room on the property. I wanted to prove that financial power didn't have to turn people into monsters without empathy. My international television interviews continued to make an impact. I appeared on shows with Oprah, Ellen, and several CNN specials. My story inspired millions of older women who felt invisible or devalued by their families. I received thousands of letters from women sharing their own experiences of unacknowledged maternal sacrifice. I established a foundation called Invisible Mothers, which offered legal and financial support to older women facing family abandonment or financial abuse by their adult children. The response was overwhelming. Apparently, my situation was far more common than society wanted to admit. 2 months after my children began their forced labor, they requested a meeting. They wanted to show me that they were changing, that they had learned their lesson. I received them in my new home, in the main living room overlooking the garden. It was important for them to see the contrast between my prosperous new life and the modest conditions they were now living in. They arrived exhausted, their hands cracked, their work clothes stained, and with a humility I had never seen in them before. David spoke first. "Mom, these past 2 months have been the hardest of our lives. We finally understand what your work meant, the sacrifice you made for us. We never truly valued it." Catherine, with genuine tears this time, added, "Teresa, I know I was cruel to you. I know I treated you like you were beneath us. Now that I work in the kitchen, that I see how hard that job is, I understand that I should never have looked down on you." Michael, the most broken of the three, could barely speak. "Mom, forgive me. I was a coward. I failed you when you needed me the most. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I want you to know that every day I work thinking about how to repair the damage I caused." I listened in silence, weighing whether their words were sincere or just another desperate manipulation. Time would tell. 6 months after that meeting, something had genuinely changed in my children. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion from hard work. It was a deeper transformation of character. David had developed a real humility he had never possessed before. When cleaning the offices, he greeted everyone with respect, from executives to security guards. He had learned that honest work, whatever it was, deserved dignity. Catherine had become one of the most dedicated employees at the terrace. The chefs respected her because she never complained. She arrived early and stayed until everything was spotless. She had learned to value every dollar she earned, because now she knew exactly how much effort it took to make it. Michael had discovered an unexpected vocation in maintenance. He realized he had practical skills he'd never developed and found genuine satisfaction in fixing broken things. His co-workers respected him because, despite his college degree, he never acted superior to them. But the most meaningful change came when they began their community service in nursing homes. Seeing people my age abandoned by their families showed them a painful mirror of what they had almost done to me. David told me, with tears in his eyes, about a 70-year-old man who waited for visits that never came. About a woman who kept photos of children who hadn't called her in years. One Sunday afternoon, I received an unexpected call from the director of the nursing home where they volunteered. "Mrs. Miller," she said, "I have to tell you something extraordinary. Your children have informally adopted several of our residents. David comes on weekends to play chess with Mr. Isaac, who hadn't had visitors in 3 years. Catherine teaches cooking to Mrs. Estelle, who was deeply depressed. Michael fixes the residents' belongings without anyone asking him to. That information moved me more than I expected. It wasn't an act to impress me. They didn't know I'd find out. It was a genuine change born from experiencing firsthand what elder abandonment looks like. 8 months after the restaurant incident, I decided to do something I hadn't planned. I invited them to dinner at my new home. Not at the terrace, not in neutral territory, but in my home. When they arrived, I immediately noticed how they had changed physically. They were leaner but stronger. Their skin was sun-worn from working outdoors, their hands rough but steady. Julia prepared a simple yet delicious dinner. During the meal we talked, really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. They told me about their jobs, the people they'd met, the lessons they'd learned. There were no pretenses, no lies, no hidden intentions. Just genuine conversations between real people. David apologized again, but this time it was different. "Mom," he said, "I'm not asking for forgiveness because I need your money or because I want my old life back. I'm asking because I finally understand the harm I caused. I understand that I stole the dignity you earned through 40 years of sacrifice." Catherine added something that truly surprised me. "Teresa, I've been thinking about changing careers. I want to study gastronomy formally. Working in your restaurant's kitchen showed me a passion I didn't know I had. I don't want to go back to being the superficial woman I used to be." Michael was the most honest of all. "Mom, I know I'll probably never regain your full trust, but I want you to know these past months have been the first in my adult life where I'm truly proud of who I am. Honest work has given me a self-respect I never had when I was living off your money." At the end of the dinner, I made a decision I'd been considering for weeks. I told them they could stop working in my businesses if they wanted to. They had completed 8 of the 12 months I had originally set, but their transformation was undeniable. To my surprise, all 3 asked to continue. David wanted to keep working as a janitor until he completed the full year. Catherine asked to stay in the terrace kitchen while studying gastronomy. Michael wanted to continue doing maintenance because he had found his true calling. A year after the incident that changed our lives forever, we held a real family dinner. This time at the terrace, but in the restaurant's kitchen, not in the elegant dining room. Catherine cooked for us. Michael had repaired the table we ate on. David had cleaned every surface until it shone. It wasn't a magical reconciliation. Deep wounds take time to heal completely. But it was a genuine beginning. For the first time in decades, I was having dinner with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. That night, as I drove back to my mansion, I reflected on the year that had passed. I had lost children who were, in truth, strangers. But I had found real people, people worth knowing. I had lost emotional parasites, but I had gained a family that had earned the right to exist in my life. I didn't regret raising them. I only regretted not realizing sooner that kindness should never come at the cost of self-destruction, that real maternal love sometimes requires teaching painful lessons in order to raise worthy human beings. At 70 years old, I had learned that it's never too late to demand the respect you deserve. 5 years have passed since that night that changed the course of our lives forever. Today, as I write these lines from my study overlooking the garden I love so much, I can say with absolute certainty that the hardest decision of my life turned out to be the most liberating one. David never returned to the banking world. After completing his year of work as a janitor, he decided to study hotel management and now manages 2 of my smaller properties. Not because I handed them to him, but because he earned them, working his way up and learning every aspect of the business. His employees respect him because he knows exactly what every job entails. He divorced Catherine 2 years ago, not out of resentment, but because they had both changed so much that they were no longer compatible. She had found her passion in gastronomy, and he had discovered that he valued simplicity over social appearances. It was an amicable separation between 2 people who had grown in different directions. Catherine graduated as a professional chef and is now the executive chef at the Terrace. Her transformation has been the most dramatic of all. The woman who once mocked my clothes now proudly wears her kitchen uniform, stained with sweat and honest work. Her dishes have received national recognition, and several prestigious restaurants have offered her higher-paying positions. But she prefers to stay where she discovered the true value of work. She married one of the restaurant's suppliers, a simple man who appreciates her dedication and story of redemption. They have a little daughter, Hope. My first real granddaughter. Not because she's the first biologically, but because she's the first born into a family that understands the value of genuine relationships. Michael found his soulmate through his community work. He met a social worker named Carmen at one of the nursing homes where he volunteered. They married a year ago in a simple but deeply loving ceremony. Together, they opened a maintenance company specializing in adapting homes for the elderly. Their work gives them purpose and allows them to live comfortably and with dignity. I have 3 more grandchildren now. Michael and Carmen's twin boys, 2 years old, who fill my house with laughter every Sunday when they come for lunch. Seeing Michael as a father has shown me the man he always could have been, but never had the chance to become. My foundation, Invisible Mothers, has expanded internationally. We now have offices in 12 countries and have helped more than 10,000 women regain their dignity and their rights. The case I'm proudest of is that of an 80-year-old woman in Colombia, whose children had her institutionalized against her will to steal her house. Our lawyers not only recovered her property but also set a legal precedent that now protects other elders in similar situations. I've written 3 books about my experience. The first, The Invisible Maid, became an international bestseller and was adapted into a Netflix series. The rights to my story have generated millions of dollars, all of which go directly to the foundation. It's ironic to think that the story of my humiliation became the source of dignity for thousands of other women. Julia, my housekeeper, became much more than that. She's my companion, my confidant, my chosen family. When her grandchildren come to visit, my home fills with a joy I never experienced when my own children were young, because this relationship is built on mutual respect, not obligation or guilt. At 74, my health is excellent. I do yoga every morning in my garden, swim in my pool, and travel frequently, giving lectures about dignity in old age and healthy family relationships. I have more energy now than I ever did when I worked as a domestic worker, because for the first time I live for myself, not just for others. My children and I have dinner together once a month, not out of duty, but because we genuinely enjoy each other's company. Our conversations are real, our laughter sincere, and our love earned, not taken for granted. When Hope calls me Grandma Tear, with that smile that lights up the entire room, I feel a connection I never had with the abstract idea of being a grandmother. The restaurant where it all began has become a symbol of second chances. We have a policy of hiring people who have faced hardships: single mothers, elderly workers who lost their jobs, former inmates seeking reintegration into society. The Terrace is no longer just a thriving business. It's a community of people who understand the value of earned dignity. Elliot, my trusted partner, retired last year. At his farewell party, he told me something I'll never forget. Teresa, in 15 years of working with you, I never once saw the poor housekeeper you pretended to be. I always saw the brilliant businesswoman you truly were. I just hoped one day you'd see her too. I have completely forgiven my children, but not because I forgot what happened. I forgave them because they chose to change, because they worked to earn that forgiveness, because they became people worthy of my love and respect. Forgiveness wasn't a free gift. It was the result of years of genuine effort on their part. My lawyers have suggested I revise my will to include my children again. I've decided to leave them a portion of my fortune, though most will continue to go to the foundation. They've learned to live by their own means, and that independence has made them stronger. This morning, as I had breakfast on my terrace, I reflected on the question journalists always ask me: do you regret taking such drastic measures? My answer remains the same: no. Sometimes, real love requires making decisions that seem cruel but are necessary for growth. I don't regret raising my children. I only regret not realizing sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the expense of self-destruction, that respect isn't automatically granted just because one is a mother. It's earned through consistent actions. And it's never too late to demand the dignity you deserve. To new mothers, I always say, love your children enough to teach them that relationships require reciprocity. That love without respect is just manipulation disguised as affection. And that your worth as a person does not depend on how much you're willing to sacrifice. Today, I am a complete woman. Not just a sacrificed mother,